Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, bringing back the classic. And I've upgraded it, so that's a bonus. But I've only upgraded it because I looked at the different set options and said, well, the set I was originally using would still be good for the build, but this set fits it better and it gives it a better survivability for its role. So, here we go guys, the Northern Wind. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Of course, Nord, hands down, the best option. And I say that because of the racial passive that gives you extra resistances. Any race can play this, but the Nord is better at it, and it doesn't require you to use another set that gives you armor to get the higher resistance values. It's really functional for the way it works. So let's go ahead and take a look at the stats. We have 64 into Magicka. You don't have to do this. I do this for my own personal things. I can't explain other than I know the mechanics of a lot of dungeons. You can go more into health, and you can switch up the skills when we get to those to other things that might be better for you and your group or whatever. But for myself and the people I play with, this is how I play it. And I primarily play this build in dungeons. I do not play this build very often in trials. If I do, I'm usually off-tanking. I never play it as a main tank. And the reason for that is, it's not saying that it couldn't main tank, it could, but I'd have to change a lot of things around to get it to do that, and I don't like doing that. I like to leave my builds as they are and play them and enjoy them and have fun. So, taking a look at the stats, we have 31,000 max Magicka, 31k health, 21k stamina, and these are not exact accurate stats because there's something wrong with the PTS where it gives you a flux of stats depending on different factors. Like I can go beat on the target dummy, walk away, and the stats will change. So this is just a idea of what the stats will look like. 1097 mag recovery. We do have a 661 stam recovery, and that gets a little bit higher, but it's not a necessity to have high stamina unless you're using the stamina taunt from the Undaunted line, and really you don't need it with this build. So moving on, we have a 3042 spell damage with the 2687 weapon damage, 41% spell crit, 29% weapon critical, and this can go up a little bit higher, but not by much. And then of course we have our really small penetration, which isn't really a big thing. Spell resistance, we have 22,494, and then 21,768 physical with 1,300 critical resist. That's just standard anyways. Moving on, Thief of Mundstone. This build does not work without this. It needs it, and it's super powerful. We have Major Prophecy at all times, and then of course, Tri-Stat Food, gonna be the better option. Alright, moving on. Now, again, please, when I say best option, like when I talk about the race, the Nord being the best option for this, like I said, it's only because they get a resistance increase in their stats or in their passives, and that's really it. There are other sets you can change out to give you greater resistance and make this build more better for other races. So, taking a look at food-wise, Bewitched Sugar Skulls. I mean, hands down, you can't get better than this. Max health, max stamina, Magicka, and then the health recovery plays so well into this, it's not even funny. And then, of course, when you're not tanking, longfin pasty with melon sauce, and this is another food you can use all the time anyways. So, I don't have the sugar skull going, I have the longfin pasty going. Alright, so now that we've seen that, potion-wise, Tri-Pots, really good when tanking, or even the spell power pots, even though you don't need them. Alright, looking at the gear. Starting with the monster set. Any ice build in the game, anyone playing an ice DPS, ice tank, it doesn't matter. This is by far one of the best monster sets for an ice player to use. And that's because it is literally the only monster set that deals ice damage. and that is Ice Hearts. Now, Ice Hearts, the only reason why I'm running Ice Hearts is one piece, it gives you critical chance. The two piece, when you deal critical damage, you have a 20% chance to gain a damage shield that absorbs 5, almost 6k damage for 6 seconds. While this damage shield holds, you deal 897 frost damage to all enemies within 5 meters every 1 second, and this effect can occur every 6 seconds, and the damage scales off the higher weapon or spell damage. The shield still scales off of health. The damage, the frost damage, scales off of weapon or spell damage. Alright, next set. I mean, this is a given. People will know this. Julianus. Great set. Gives you 2 and 4 piece give crit chance. 3 piece gives you max magicka. 5 piece gives you weapon and spell damage. People are going to say this looks more like a DPS than a tank. Yeah, it does. But it's because of Ice Hearts. And Ice Hearts giving you that damage shield is going to keep you alive. More than it is going to help you deal damage. Alright, next set we're running is Permafrost. Now, the reason I switched over to Permafrost, 2 piece, max health, 3 piece, max magicka, 4 piece, mag recovery, and then the 5 piece. The 5 piece is the real big hitter here. While you have a damage shield on you, your health recovery is increased by 1,106. This is life-changing. This is life-saving. Okay? Because if your shield falls off, that health recovery will kick in and bring your health, keep your health stabilizing constantly. So, now it only works when you have that damage shield up, but you have so many damage shields besides the... You have two damage shields. So you have the Ice Hearts and you have another one. And those are going to be proccing a lot. So, really good. Alright. Going over traits and enchants, starting with the helm, chest, and legs. We are running 2 invigorating, 1 on the helm, 1 on the legs. This is going to give you more recovery. We have the tri-stats on all 3 pieces. This is going to give you better overall stats. And then the... chest piece is reinforced. On the smaller pieces, for this build, you cannot take sturdy. It will not work. I've tried it. It doesn't offer you any other benefits. You're not going to be blocking as much as you would normally, but you do still block. You only block major incoming attacks. So we go with 4 divines with max health enchants. The 4 divines are going to help you boost your crit chance from the Thief of Mudstone, which is going to let you crit more often, keeping that damage shield from Ice Hearts applied more effectively. Alright, moving on to jewelry, we have 2 Trirune rings. Again, tri-stats, always good for any role you're playing, whether you're a tank, a healer, or damage dealer. The more access you have to more attributes, the more skills you have access to that you can use more efficiently and effectively. The 2 spell damage, of course, are there to boost your spell damage. And then last but not least, we have a infused magic recovery ring. Now, you can go with the infused tri-ring or prismatic, but you're going to lose a lot of recovery that this build needs. Now, if you're playing a Breton, don't worry about it. Use the tri-recovery. It's actually going to be better. Any other race, mag recovery is going to be the better option. Unless you're playing Argonian, then you can go the tri-recovery, because your potions will cover the rest. Alright, moving on to the weapons. Front bar, we have an infused frost damage enchant. This is to keep up brittle. This is to keep up the frost damage coming in from yourself. And then on top of that, the infused enchant makes it hit harder. And then it will allow you to do it every 3 seconds. On the back bar, people are going to be like, no crusher? No. If you want crusher, you can put it on here, but I don't use it, so. On the back bar, we have a weapon spell damage enchant. Now, a lot of people, again, are going to say this is DPS and not a tank. Doesn't matter. What matters is the more spell and weapon damage you have, the harder Ice Hearts is going to hit. And the harder Ice Hearts hits, the more faster you kill things around you. That's bosses, that's trash, that's everything. So that's why I use this primarily in dungeon runs or arenas. Really love this in Dragonstar. Black Rose, it works really good. I mean, it's a great build for Black Star even, or Black Rose, but it's really, really good in Dragonstar Arena. Alright, now moving on to skills. With all my builds, I'm going to tell you, unlock all the passives to every skill line you use. It doesn't matter if you use it actively or not. Unlock all the passives for every skill line and all the skills, because the more skills you have at your fingertips, the stronger your build becomes. Because then you have access to more tools that you can use in other situations. All right, going over the skills on the bar. Starting with the first skill, we have Frozen or Frost Clinch. Frost Clinch is a very good skill because, one, it's going to be your taunt. It's going to be your thing that applies a chilled status effect. It's going to be the thing that immobilizes an enemy and inflicts major maim on them. It is your primary skill you're going to be using most of the time. Next up, we have Gripping Shards. This one is a great skill. It does an AoE immobilize for 3 seconds, frost damage every second for 12. Enemies hit or overcome with bitter cold, reducing their movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. And the damage done is scaled off your max health and has a higher chance to apply chilled status effect, which means brittle. This is almost, I would say, mandatory for this build to have. It is an awesome skill. You can place it wherever you're standing, and it's this massive AoE that does damage, and it does a lot of other things. If you want higher damage, put more into health, but the way it's set up with Ice Hearts and this, you're actually going to be dealing a decent amount of damage and tanking at the same time. Next skill we have is Arctic Blast. Again, great skill. It has a heal on it, and then a heal over time, over 5 seconds, and then while the effect persists, the winds pulse, dealing frost damage every second to nearby enemies. Enemies hit by this 3 times are stunned for 4 seconds, and this the healing from this ability scales off your max health. So it's good to have a high health, but it's not really necessary, because you're going to have so much healing coming in from your recovery, your health recovery from this, from your healer, that it's just not going to matter anyways. Alright, next skill we have, and this is our Armor Breaker. This is where we get our breach from. Elemental Susceptibility. Instant cast, no cost. It applies major breach, and then every 6 seconds while the ability persists, the enemy is affected with burning, chilled, or concussion status effects, but it also has a longer lasting time. It has a 60-second time or duration, so you don't have to cast this non-stop. I like the old version of this where anytime you dealt damage it reapplied it, but I love the new thing with the status effect. So every 6 seconds while this ability persists, the enemy is affected with burning, chilled, or concussion status effects, and that's mainly based on what staff you're using. So this one, the chilled status effect. Alright, next up we have Enter Light. This is going to give you your Major Prophecy, increasing your spell critical, but while you have this slotted, you get 5% extra Max Magicka, and then if you have a certain passive in the Mage's Guild skill line, Magicka Controller increases your Magicka, Max Magicka and Magic Recovery by 2% for each mage ability slotted. Since we have this, we actually get 7% more Max Magicka. And then on top of that, we get that 2% extra mag recovery, which isn't much, but it helps out. Next skill we have, and this is what the build is built around. And this is the skill that is going to keep you alive. It's going to do the most damage, and you're going to want this up a lot. This is why I used to run Shulks on this build, was Shulks gave you ultimate whenever you were in combat. It just gave you 1 ultimate every second. And it made it really easy to fire this off. But this one, Northern Storm. So, twist a violent storm around you, dealing X amount of frost damage every second for 8 seconds. Enemies around you, to enemies around you, and reducing their movement speed by 40% and increasing your max magic by 15% for 30 seconds. You and nearby allies gain major protection, reducing your damage taken by 10%. This is awesome. You get that really good damage mitigation with that extra damage, and then your group also gets that snare kind of slow on the enemies for the duration. So it's really, really good. Moving on to the back bar, and we have Frozen Device. Now this is going to be your primary pull. This is how you pull your enemies to you. You set it down like a trap. You can have 3 of these armed at any time. Basically, when triggered, the enemy is teleported to you, immobilized, so stunned for 3 seconds, dealt 5k frost damage, and afflicted with major maim, reducing their damage done by 10% for 4 seconds. And as you can see, you can have 3 of these out at a time. Really good for boss adds. When you need to get them back to the group and you want to burn them down fast, this is a great tool for it. This helps in so many dungeons. It's not even funny. Next up, our primary buff, damage, everything like that, Blockade of Frost. This is a skill you will be keeping up 90 to 100% of the time. You slam your staff down, creating an ice barrier in front of you, dealing X amount of frost damage to enemies in the area every second, and applying a frost safeguard for 6 seconds to you and nearby allies, absorbing 9k damage from projectiles. Now, it is a projectile shield. It is not a regular damage shield. It only works good against projectiles. So, really good in those situations, but chilled enemies become frozen and immobilized for 4 seconds. Now remember, you have a lot of them like chill effects. This is going to help you keep that chilled effect and keep them locked down more effectively. Next up, excuse my dog. Next up we have Blue Betty, and this one restores magic over 25 seconds and gives you major brutality, major sorcery, increasing weapon and spell damage by 20%. Every 5 seconds that edges up, you remove 1 negative effect on you. Last but not least, the best buff in the game for resistance, Ice Fortress. Now, Ice Fortress is good for you. The other version, the other morph, Frost Expanse, is really good for your group. This one, the people have to be within 8 meters of you, but it does give your group major resolve, increasing physical and spell resist by 6k for 24 seconds, and you gain major or minor protection, reducing your damage taken by 5% for 24 seconds. Now, the reason why this build works so good in dungeons, and not just for fast clears, but good overall, is the fact that you can get up to a 15% damage reduction on top of all the other mitigation you have. And this damage reduction also applies to the damage your shields take, so it makes it harder for your shields to be removed on you from the projectile shield and from the Ice Heart shield. So it makes it to where those shields become a lot stronger. Alright, now that I've talked about those skills, let's talk about a few other skills that are really good for this build. Deep Fissure is a great way to get Major Breach applied to multiple targets. Really good when you're playing in Overland, not so much when you're playing in dungeons, and the reason why is the time delay it takes to activate. It's a great damage skill though, if you want to use it. Fetcher Infection is another one that's really good. It deals magic damage over 10 seconds. Every second cast of this ability deals 50% more damage, and then the Fletcher flies rip through enemy flesh, afflicting them with minor vulnerability for the duration, increasing their damage taken by 5%. Really good, even in a dungeon situation. So if you want to switch out one of your skills for something, I would suggest this one is really good. Some of the other skills I do like to use sometimes, instead of using things like Enter Light, Lotus Blossoms, another really good one. This one, you embrace a Lotus Blessing, causing your light attacks to restore health and your fully charged heavy attacks to restore health to you and a nearby ally for 20 seconds anytime you deal those, and it does give you the Major Prophecy for the duration of 20 seconds. Really good for that. The Enchanted Forest is a great AoE group heal. And then you have access to Enchanted Growth, Budding Seeds, and the Nature's Embrace with Leeching Vines. So any one of these you can switch out with another skill if you want, and they all give you a great benefit. Or if you want to play healer, another great way to do that. Winter's Embrace, we're already using most of these skills except for Crystallized Slab. Crystallized Slab is kind of like having the Wall of Elements up. It's really good for projectiles, and then any damage the enemy does, it will shoot magic damage back at them, or it'll restore magic at you and shoot an ice damage back to them. It's a really good skill to have, but we don't want it on the build because it's just a magic consumption, which we don't want to expend too much of because of the way we're playing already. We're already going to be expending a lot of magicka. That's why we need that higher magicka pool. Weapon skills, Destruction Staff. There's some great skills here. Crushing Shock is a great skill for interrupting and setting enemies off balance. Pulsar is a great skill if you want to do some AoE, just what I call AoE rapture damage. And you can just walk into an area and just cast this and nuke things down. It's really good for like delves, public dungeons, Craglorn. Any of the group content in Craglorn is really great for. Dungeon wise, if you're playing more DPS, yes, it's great. Moving on to armor, we are in heavy armor, and the buff here you can use, which is really good because you can choose here. If I was going to choose anyone, I would choose the Unstoppable over the Immovable. The Immovable kind of locks you in place. This still gives you some maneuverability, but it also gives you a immunity to knockback and disabling effects for 6 seconds, which you want some of those things on you for some of the CP situations. So either one of these you can use. I'm just going to take that one. But the other thing I want to point out here is resource management with this build is through the rapid, meaning Revitalize. Increases your magic and stamina restore from your heavy attacks. So you get a baseline of 30%, and then you get an extra 20 on top of that. So you get a 50% return of resources on your heavy attacks. Now your return baseline is about 1200, so you're actually going to get 50% of that on top of that 1200 back. So you actually get about 2k back whenever you heavy attack. World skills, soul magic. Either one of these is really good in solo play or even in some group situations. Guild skills, Fighters Guild, not a lot of these are really necessary, but if you want to have a stamina skill for pulling enemies instead of using a magicka skill, Silver Leash is really good. If you're playing a healer, Ring of Preservation, another really great skill, even though it does give the minor protection, you're already going to get that from your Expansive Cloak or your Frost Cloak. This will give it to your group. So you can give them that buff that gives them resistances, then you can put this down if you're a healer and give them even more mitigation. Barb Trap, great for damage over time and stuff. Dawnbreaker Smiting, great CC for PvP, and it can be used by a magicka person. So Mage's Guild, Ice Comet, great knockdown, stun, movement speed thing, great damage. And then after the impact, enemies in the area take an extra X amount of frost damage over 13 seconds. Really good for that. Structured Entropy is a great damage and heal. And then Balance, if you want something else to use for tanking, you can use Balance. It's a great skill, even though it screws up your healing a little bit, and it costs health. Psijic Order has a lot of great skills that you can use. Min Spirit is great if you're playing a healer. Channeled Acceleration is a good one for if you want that minor force for a long period of time, and it gives you a little boost to movement speed, which is good for being more mobile. Elemental Weapon is a great way to apply Burning, Concussed, or Shield status effect, and it will apply them based on the staff again, so really good for that. And then if the power is not consumed in time, you restore magicka, so it's a really good ability for not only the cost but also the return. And Introspection is a great skill to have for returning resources if you're struggling. So this is a great one to change out with like something like Blue Betty. I know most people wouldn't give it up, but this is a great skill to replace with that. And then when you have it, it also gives you another damage shield when you're blocking. So moving on to Undaunted. Overflowing Altar is a great skill to have in a group setting, but not a necessity. It's the synergy aspect of it is really good. Spiked Bone Shield's a really good one that you can use if you're struggling keeping yourself alive. Inner Beast is a great stamina taunt. And then Energy Orb, again, if you're playing a healer or even a tank and you want to get that extra health out to your allies, that's a great way to do it because you're going to be standing opposite to them most of the time. Alliance War, Warhorn, we already have it on our back bar. Most people know what this is. That's kind of why I skipped over it, because most people know most tanks are going to have Warhorn in some way, shape, or form. And this is a great skill. But it's not a necessity. You can actually change it out for other skills, but I like it for the build and the major force for your group. So Echoing Vigor, great group heal, and Razor Caltrops is a great way to apply the major breach for 4 seconds, but it will stay reapplied because you get it to hit twice. So support wise, Reviving Barrier, great skill. You can swap it out with Warhorn if you want, or even Northern Storm, but I wouldn't give up Northern Storm for Barrier for myself because I like Northern Storm better. Efficient Purge, really good way to remove negative effects if you're playing a healer. And then Stalwart Guard. Racials, Nord, again, really good. Frost Resistance, the max health of 1,000, and then the Stalwart where you get the stamina, and then whenever you take damage you gain 5 ultimate, and that can happen every 10 seconds. That's why, like, it was good. It's good with Shulks, but Permafrost can be a little bit better because of the health recovery, and this is really good, like, with Shulks, because you get the 5 ultimate plus the extra 1, so you're getting 6 ultimate every 10 seconds plus 1 every second, which makes the casting of Northern Storm way more effective. Rugged, really good because of the spell and physical resist of 2600. Crafting, Alchemy, and medicinal use in Alchemy and Provisioning, Gourmet and Connoisseur, always great to have. Now we're going to take a look at the CP. So taking a look at CP, green, professional upkeep, I mean the usual ones, Stade's Blessing, Liquid Efficiency, and Rationer, good to have. Blue Tree, Duelist debuff, this one reduces your damage taken from single target attacks by 10%. Enduring Resolve reduces your damage from damage over time effects, by 10%. And then Unassailable reduces your area of effect damage by 10%. And then last but not least, Reinforced. When you're bracing, you gain a damage shield that absorbs 5,000, another 6k damage for 3 seconds. And this effect can occur once every 10 seconds. Remember, most boss encounters in dungeons are going to have either a one-hit mechanic or they're going to have a power hit. That power hit is where this comes in handy. And you'll have that plus, 1 or 2 other shields. So it's really good to have. Next up, we have Fortify. This gives you increased armor by 1731. Then we have Rejuvenation. This one gives you the health, magic, and stamina recovery. We have Shield Master. This one reduces the cost of your damage shield abilities by 2% per stage, so 10% cost reduction. Mainly, it doesn't affect anything we use, but if you're using it for, like, Bone Shield, it's going to make the cost a lot cheaper. And then Bastion. Increase the effectiveness of your damage shields and damage against those shields by 3% per stage with a 15% effectiveness. That's why our damage shields are so big right now, is because of that. We have that extra 15%. Otherwise, when it comes to like passive stuff, just unlock all the passives in the tree. And somebody asked me to talk about that. Unlock all the passives in each tree because they're going to be more beneficial in the long term, which is going to help you out overall. Now, I would normally show you a rotation or something on this build, on a build like this, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to show you the effectiveness of this build. Now, this is something I don't normally do with a build, but I'm going to do it with this one because I know a lot of people are going to say it can't be that effective. But the reality is it's really effective. And we're actually going to go to Sunrise with this. Because Sunrise is a really challenging trial anyways. And the reason I set it to the difficulty I did is just to show you how the build works. So it's a really powerful build when used properly. It's not something where you're going to run and just spam a bunch of skills. You can do that when you're in a group. But when you're playing, like I'm going to show you, I'm just going to show you the defensive aspects of the build and its survivability. So you guys can see for yourselves how well this can work. Now you remember when brittle gets applied, it anyways, so it increases their damage taken, I believe, by 5%. So
this way, faithful. Divine Olkosh awaits your
oops,
grateful adoration.
don't need that. Frost Cloak. And remember, you're going to be using a lot of resources with this, so it's good to keep your resources coming. You will be heavy attacking a lot. And when you heavy attack, which is another thing I want to talk about, because I don't remember them removing this, but the Tri-Focus fully charged heavy attacks grant you a damage shield that absorbs another amount of damage. So you're going to have a lot of damage shields going off with this build. So primarily going to start with this. We're going to drop our wall of elements and then just do our usual stuff here when it comes to this. Now you're going to notice I'm going to take a lot of damage, but that's okay because it's just to show you the effect of its survivability. As long as you're not standing in red like a moron, like most things I've been doing so far, you can stay alive for a decent amount of time. Now remember, when you're doing a trial, you're not going to come in here by yourself. You're going to be in here with a group of 12 people, you and 11 others. So it's going to be a lot more easier to handle that survivability. Better trial to show this off in would have been Hellrust, or not Hellrust Citadel. Well, Hellrust Citadel would have been a good one, but would have been the Maw of Lorkosh. So, gonna go ahead and waste shrine and then use a crate to repair all my gear. But that's pretty much it. That's the build. It's not a it's not a super build, it's not a god build, it's just a fun build to play, and that's why we're all here anyways, is to have fun. And regardless of what many might say, this build might look like a DPS, but it's a tank, and it's made to tank. It's made to deal damage. It's made to take a lot of damage. It's made this way on purpose. Survivability is key when it comes to tanking. And the more ways you have of mitigating incoming damage, the more survivable you will be. And you have to maintain that even when blocking attacks, because you're going to burn through a chunk of stamina or magicka, not as much as you would normally, but a chunk. So your block costs itself is going to be about 1,094. So you're going to be spending 1,094 magicka whenever you block. So just remember that. And remember, heavy attacking is key. You've got to heavy attack. If you don't heavy attack, you're not going to get that 9k damage shield, and you're not going to get your resources coming in and flowing in like they should be. Even with potions, it doesn't help. Even with the high recovery, it doesn't help. Even if you had 20k magicka, it doesn't help. Because you're casting so many abilities that are large casting abilities that it consumes a lot of magicka. That's why I suggest, like for beginners, use silver shards instead of the frozen devices. That's going to be better for you because it's going to save you on a resource. Magic Frozen Vices is for really experienced players who know the dungeons mechanics and stuff. Silver Shards, I would say, is better for somebody beginning. Same thing with front bar stuff. I wouldn't change any of this. I'd leave it alone because it's what makes the build work really well. So, but yeah, other than that, this build is one of the funnest builds I've ever played, and I really enjoy playing this. I played it for 4 years almost. This build. I don't play it anymore, primarily because I don't tank that often anymore. I primarily heal with most of my characters, or play healer primarily. So for dungeons and stuff, and it's not because I'm a bad tank. It's because I shake a lot, so it makes my tanking skills not as good, and it makes it. I'm just a lot better at healing. So, I'm just better at healing than I am tanking. I'll just put it that way. I'm still a good tank. I'm not going to say I'm a great tank. I'm a good tank, and I'm a great healer. So, but yeah, that's it. That's the build. I love it. I think it's great. I've always loved the Northern Wind. So, but that's pretty much it for this video, guys. And as always, if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. If you do subscribe, I do suggest you click that notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.